episode 1 of the Citizens in Solidarity Vodcast. My name is Andile Khumalo, and I'll be your host as we unearth all of the stories of solidarity coming from the Solidarity Fund and, of course, the outcomes as a result of the fund's interventions. Those who are doing work constantly, day in, day out, to be additive to government's response to this horrible pandemic. Who's accountable for the 3 billion rands in public and donor funding? In this episode, I'll be talking to the fund's deputy chairman, my good man Adrian Eindhoven, and Adi and I are going to be chatting for the next few minutes about his role, of course, in the fund. Adi, welcome to the show, and I guess the best place to start is, who are you, first of all, and how did you ultimately get involved in the fund?
Thanks, Andile. Yeah, so let me start with who I am. So as you say, I work for a private family investment business, and I kind of manage their South African and African-based investments, mainly in insurance and restaurants. So I was called by Ibrahim Patel to say that the president would like me to be deputy chairman of the Solidarity Fund, and is this something I'd be open to? I was very excited about the idea of an initiative in the context of the COVID crisis that would seek to unite South Africans in the fight against COVID-19, that would bring together business, civil society, the union movement, government, try to mobilize communities, individuals, citizens to work together to deal with the COVID crisis. I was really enthusiastic, very excited about the idea of playing a role and trying to be part of building the Solidarity Fund and trying to make sure that the Solidarity Fund could have the biggest possible impact that it could make in the context of this crisis, and bringing South Africans together to do so.
Right. Well, what was it like in those early days? What did it take to get this initiative going? Because multi-billion rand fund that's out there to serve South Africans in such a short period of time, in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, can't be the easiest thing to get off the ground.
You have to build an institution. You need charters for the board and its subcommittees. You need to appoint members. You need to have delegations of authority. You need to create companies to support. You need audit and all of the various fund administration and legal support. All of those institutions, organizations to help support the establishment of that institution. And while we were doing that, and appointing a team, we needed to find a chief executive. And while we were doing that, we had to respond to the crisis. So we couldn't say, we've got 3 months or 6 months to build the organization that's going to respond to the crisis. We had to, it had to happen immediately. So, within 7 days of being called upon to do this, we made our first 100 million rand commitment to the purpose of PPE. And so, we were set up as to be an agile, rapid response vehicle, and we kind of immediately stepped into that role. And very soon thereafter, we made our, a very significant commitment of 250 million rand to the National Health Laboratory Services to enable them at that point to double their testing capacity, double their procurement of test kits, because we knew that testing was such a kind of critical and urgent issue. It's a bit, but certainly in the 6 months, since from its inception, it's been just the most phenomenal amount of work, all by people working pro bono, either volunteering or being seconded by companies. But during that time, Andile, we didn't pay and still haven't paid a single cent in expenses, to consultants or to employees, salaries, board fees. All the money that we received, was able to be directly focused on kind of the high impact investments that we were looking to make. When
you look back, you can read the numbers, we see the numbers are kind of highlights, but can you put some life into the numbers on some of the investments and initiatives and projects that are key for you and kind of come top of mind?
We were really looking for additionality and impact, that when we make that investment, we know that if we hadn't stepped in the way that we did at the time that we did, the impact would not have happened in the way that we were able to make it happen. So we wanted to get outsized leverage and impact from the investments that we made, so that we could make our 3 billion rand go as far as possible. And if I look at some of the flagship projects that I think we all really proud of having been part of. The first was obviously the PPE procurement, and we know that there've been lots of challenges in PPE procurement. The partnership that we had with Business for South Africa, the phenomenal job that they did to procure PPE at an incredibly difficult time with a team of volunteers, from the private sector, procurement specialists, health specialists, logistics and supply chain specialists. I think it was remarkable what we were able to do, and how quickly we were able to procure and bring PPE into the country. Remember that most PPE at that point was coming, from China, and there were countries, businesses from all over the world competing for a very limited stock of PPE. It was an incredibly difficult time to be procuring, and so I'm really proud of what we were able to do at that time, and obviously of the work that Business for South Africa did as our procurement partners. I mean, the others in the health area, I think, the ventilator project, where we got involved, in July, we approved the procurement of South African-made CPAP machines, oxygen support machines, ventilators. And, by the end of August, these were coming off the production line and into hospitals. We now have 7,000, we're now in early October, 7,000 of these ventilators are in hospitals, across all 9 provinces in the country, playing a critical role in saving lives. We're doing a total procurement of 20,000 of those ventilators. And those were not, we couldn't procure those from anywhere else in the world. So they were not available, but critically needed by our health system. So I think hugely important. I think the support that we gave to the National Health Laboratory Services and the testing, I think the support that we gave to the academic laboratories, to enable the academic laboratories to gear up their capacity to help support the national testing program, I think was also critical. I think our communication campaign and our behavioral change campaign, I think, has been vitally important. I mean, I look at, we've had in the local radio station campaign, which started again really early on. We've now had over 2,600 daily inserts in 15 local radio stations across the country, 12 languages, obviously our 11 official languages, and then a language called Ku, which is a sign language from the Northern Cape, when they're still broadcasting one of the local radio stations in the Northern Cape in that language. And our radio inserts have even gone out in that language. So we were really trying to be as comprehensive and as inclusive as possible, and to try to inform people about the virus, demystify it for people so that they knew what it was about, how to respond to it, and could be empowered to act, as opposed to get caught in fear and stigmatization and so on.
We do live in South Africa, and you have this huge responsibility to the public about transparency, about governance, and about responsibly managing these funds. And we also had all of these reports about kind of corruption and the challenges that are happening on PPE. How did that affect you, and how were you able to kind of still, toe your own line in terms of accountability and transparency?
We are a fund for all of South Africa. We have 2 government ministers on our board. We have a trade unionist on our board. We have someone from civil society. We have a number of people from business. But we run as an independent organization, and we're not subject to any of the kind of rules or constraints of having to deal, being part of business or being part of government. And so I think a lot of it has been misunderstanding. So, the first major misunderstanding was people thought that we were funding businesses. They confused us with government small business support fund and their tourism funds. Then we were confused as being part of the process of government procurement around PPE, which obviously was, we were running our PPE procurement through the Business for South Africa business procurement platform, as opposed to, the government procurement platform. So we were completely independent from that. We're probably going to have around 30 odd reports that we're going to be issuing, over the next 2 months. Of those, about 6 or 7 of them are out already, and every week new reports are added, so that every one of our initiatives that we've embarked on, there's a clear report that explains what was the motivation for this, what did we do, where did the money go, what did we spend it on, and what is the impact that we think that we've made. We have an overview impact report that we'll be launching early in November, which kind of tries to describe not just on a case by, on a disbursement by disbursement basis, but overall, what is the impact that we think we've been making.
How does the Solidarity Fund now kind of pivot to remain relevant to the challenges that we face today?
As the fund, we're saying, we need to account for what we did during this crisis phase. We've committed and will have spent almost 2.5 billion of the 3.1 billion that we've raised. So what we want to do is have a full accounting for this crisis phase, what we did, what is the impact that we had, where did all the money go, where did it all come from, where did we receive the money from? And then to also communicate what phase 2 of the fund is going to look like. So we think that our mandate continues to be relevant during this period, but we may shift the emphasis. So the solidarity campaign and the behavioral change campaign, we know remains like a critical thing, and there's no one really else that can do it in the way that we can, to try to drive the behavioral changes that we need through the networks that we've been operating in the schools, workplaces, with the traditional leaders, with civil society organizations. So that's going to remain, the behavioral change communication campaign is going to remain a really important focus for the next 12 months. We think that is something that's needed of us. We think responding to the humanitarian challenges, specifically in food relief and gender-based violence, remain two critical areas that need the funds to continue to play a role. And there will be some targeted interventions in the health space. Obviously, it's very dependent on, if we have a second wave and how things progress in relation to how our health system copes with the situation that we're in. So we see this kind of second phase, taking place from, let's say, November this year to November next year. But we're almost at the end of the crisis phase, and there will be a very kind of detailed accounting for what happened during that phase and where all the money came from and where it all went.
My brother, let's leave it there for now. That's Adi Eindhoven, and he's the Deputy Chair of the Solidarity Fund. I want to thank you on behalf of all South Africans for raising your hand and answering the Thuma Mina call and serving us so well, my good sir.
Thanks, Andile.